Detroit in winter doesn't just feel cold, it feels unfinished, like the city paused mid sentence decades ago and never resumed speaking. The factory sat on the east side, an abandoned auto manufacturing plant once linked to suppliers of the historic auto giants of the city. Not officially owned anymore, not officially demolished either. Locals called it the Iron Cathedral. 5 stories of rusted steel, broken windows, and towering smokestacks that hadn't breathed in 30 years. I wasn't there for thrills. I was there because of the appearances. Over the past 15 years, urban explorers, scrap collectors, and one documentary student had entered the factory and never been seen again. Police chalked it up to trespassing accidents, structural collapse, hypothermia, but no bodies were ever recovered, not one. I arrived just before sunset. Snow dusted the cracked concrete lot. The main entrance doors were chained but partially torn away. Someone had forced access before. Inside, the air hit differently, metallic, dry, still. The vast production floor stretched endlessly, conveyor belts frozen in time, overhead cranes hanging like skeletal limbs, old assembly lines coated in red-brown corrosion. Graffiti covered the lower walls, but higher up, near the rafters, there were scratch marks, long, vertical gouges across the steel beams. Too high for a person to reach. My flashlight beam cut through suspended dust particles. Each step echoed and echoed again, as if the building had too much space to hold sound properly. Near the old-time clock station, I found something strange. The punch clock was still mounted to the wall, and beneath, layers of grime. The date card inside read February 12, 1987. The day the factory shut down permanently, but the card wasn't fully punched. 6 slots marked, the 7th empty. I frowned. A loud metallic clang echoed from somewhere deep in the building. Not collapse, not debris falling. Rhythmic, intentional, like something heavy being struck against steel. Once, twice, pause, then again. I moved toward the sound, past rows of silent machinery, through narrow corridors of dangling cables and broken panels. The noise stopped abruptly. The silence afterward felt worse. I reached the central assembly pit, a massive recessed floor area once used for undercarriage installations. The snow from outside had drifted through broken skylights, creating white patches across the black oil-stained concrete, and in the center of the pit, there were footprints, fresh, leaning inward, but none leading out. My breath fogged heavily in the cold air. I counted the tracks carefully. 1 set, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I stopped. 6. No 7th. A sudden vibration traveled through the metal beneath my boots. Low, subtle, like a distant engine trying to turn over. Then, from somewhere above me in the rafters, a scraping sound. Slow, dragging, moving, not falling, crawling. The scraping above me didn't stop. It moved, slowly, deliberately, following. I tilted my flashlight upward. The beam caught rusted crossbeams, dangling chains, broken wiring, and for a fraction of a second, something shifted out of the light. Not falling, not swinging, repositioning. I swallowed and stepped backward toward the edge of the central assembly pit. The vibration beneath the floor returned, stronger now, a deep mechanical tremor traveling through the steel skeleton of the building, like an engine trying to remember how to run. The old freight elevator shaft was near the pit. Its doors hung open, revealing darkness below. I didn't plan to go down, but then I saw it. On the dusty concrete near the elevator threshold, another set of footprints, fresh, smaller than the others, leading inside the elevator shaft and stopping at the edge. No fall marks, no scuffing, just gone. I counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now 7. A cold rush hit my spine. There had only been 6 earlier. I was certain. The tremor below intensified. Metal groaned somewhere deep beneath the foundation. Without warning, the time clock near the entrance echoed through the entire factory. Clack. A punch. Then another. Clack. The sound carried impossibly far, rhythmic, measured, as if someone was clocking in or out. I moved toward the noise. The time clock station glowed faintly now. The machine was running. The card inside was moving by itself. The 7th slot. Stamped. Fresh ink. The date read today's date. My throat tightened. I wasn't alone in the building. The scraping overhead grew louder. Directly above me now. I forced myself to look up again. This time, the flashlight beam lingered longer between the steel beams. Something long and dark clung to the underside of the structure. Not human, not animal. It had too many joints. Bent at wrong angles, metallic reflections flickered across its surface. It shifted sideways across the beam with a sound like steel grinding against steel. Then it dropped. Not all the way, just to the next beam below. Closer. The vibration surged violently through the floor. Machinery that had been dead for decades began to hum faintly. Belts trembled, chains swayed. A conveyor line jerked forward an inch, then stopped. The air filled with the smell of hot metal. The factory wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. The thing above me moved again, this time faster, crawling across beams with impossible fluidity, and then a voice. From somewhere inside the building, layered, mechanical, distorted. Shift incomplete. I stepped backward. The freight elevator behind me slammed shut on its own. The floor trembled once more and the voice returned, "Worker missing." My pulse pounded in my ears. The 7 footprints. The stamped time card. The vanished explorers. The factory wasn't random. It was operational, and something was maintaining the count. Above me, the shape unfolded further from the beams, limbs extending, searching, scanning, as if identifying, and then it stopped moving, completely still, facing directly toward me. The lights flickered once, twice, then everything went dark, except the glowing red numbers on the old production clock across the room. They read 7. The red number glowed through the darkness. 7, unblinking, steady. The rest of the factory disappeared into shadow, but that number remained suspended in the black light, like a verdict. Then the emergency lights flickered on, dim, industrial red, just enough to see movement. The thing above me was no longer in the rafters. It was on the ground now, between the assembly lines, its body unfolded in segments, metal-plated limbs bending at impossible angles, joints rotating with hydraulic precision. Cables trailed from its spine like severed wiring. Its surface wasn't entirely metal. There were patches, fabric, fragments of clothing fused into its structure, a torn jacket sleeve, a sneaker sole, a strip of denim embedded along one limb. My stomach dropped. It wasn't built, it was assembled. From workers. The distorted voice echoed again through the building. Production resuming. Conveyor belts jerked violently to life. Chains rattled overhead. The massive crane hook above the central pit began lowering on slow, methodical. The footprints in the snow inside the pit started to blur as something beneath the concrete shifted. The floor trembled. I ran toward the broken entrance, but the main doors had sealed shut with a metallic slam. Sheets of rusted steel slid into place from the sides like locking jaws. Behind me, the machine thing began crawling, not fast, precise, like it already knew where I would end up. The time clock rang again. Clack. The card inside advanced. I saw it clearly now. 6 names faintly printed on the faded card from decades past. The 7th slot now held no name, just a blank line. Waiting. The red production number flickered. 6. My breath caught. The machine stopped. It tilted its head like structure. Processing. Worker count. 6. The floor beneath the central pit cracked open with a grinding roar. A conveyor platform slowly rose from below. 1, 6 skeletal forms, half metal, half bone, fused into rusted harnesses, preserved in twisted mechanical positions, each chest cavity hollowed. Spaces for one more. The production clock blinked again. 5. The machine turned toward me fully. The red emergency light reflected in what might have been a visor or an exposed rib cage bent into shape. It wasn't hunting blindly. It was correcting. I grabbed a loose hanging cable from a broken control panel and wrapped it around my arm. When the machine lunged, its movement was sudden and violent, far faster than before. Metal claws scraped sparks across the floor as it closed the distance. I swung the live cable into its torso. A violent burst of sparks exploded on impact. The factory lights flickered violently. The production number glitched. 5, 7, 4. Error. The conveyor belts jerked out of sync. Chains snapped overhead. The crane hook dropped uncontrollably into the pit, crushing part of the rising platform. The skeletal forms twisted violently as the machinery malfunctioned. The machine shrieked, not mechanical, not human, something between. The red lights went out completely, total darkness. Only the faint winter moonlight filtered through broken skylights. The hum stopped. The tremor faded. Silence returned. Slow, cautiously, I moved toward the entrance again. The steel plates blocking the doors had retracted halfway during the malfunction, just enough space. I squeezed through and stumbled out into the snow. The night air felt violently alive compared to the dead air inside. Behind me, the factory stood still again, dark, abandoned, as if nothing had ever moved within it. But as I reached the edge of the lot, I heard it one last time, from deep inside the structure, faint, resetting, shift pending. I never reported what I saw. The disappearances in Detroit continue, mostly written off as urban exploration accidents inside abandoned industrial properties tied to the city's historic auto industry. But here's what stays with me. Each factory runs on quotas. Each system maintains balance. And somewhere inside that rusted cathedral of steel, a shift is always waiting to be completed. Sometimes when I check the time late at night, I swear I hear a punch clock. And for a split second, I feel something counting.